or something on YouTube or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
We do post a video on, we have the Bateman
It's-
Center has a YouTube channel, and we'll post a video on. So even though we may not have a large crowd here, we live streaming on Facebook Live and posting the video, lots of doing this.
Oh,
Good.
We're a week on live if you want to start talking very soon.
Uh-oh. Hi, I'm Mary Sue Rominger. I'm on the board of directors and a volunteer for the Bateman Horn Center. Thank you for joining us tonight, whether you're here at the Bateman Horn Center or via Facebook Live. Welcome. We will post a video of tonight's presentation on the Bateman Horn Center YouTube channel within the next few days. We plan to do a Q&A towards the end of the presentation, so please hold your questions until then. And we invite those on Facebook Live to use the comments section to ask your questions. We are in for a real treat tonight. In fact, those that are attending here in the audience are enjoying a lot of great food that our speakers have brought in. We really appreciate that. Thank you. So our speakers tonight are Nan Jensen and her sister Nicole Bangeter. They will be speaking on nutrition and how food choices impact the way we feel. Tonight they will tell us about their journey, a story of endearment as they both battled illness and helped each other through it. They are grateful for what they have learned, and they want to share the positive connection between food and illness that they experienced. Nan graduated as a registered nurse and has worked in many areas, her favorite being pediatrics. She has 3 kids, loves boating, and loves to cook. Nicole is the big sister. She is an interior designer. She has 5 kids, a passion for outdoor activities, and hopes to inspire others who want to eat healthful foods. Please welcome Nan and Nicole.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm Nan, and this is my sister Nicole. And just to give you a little bit of a background, I was diagnosed with POTS 5 years ago, almost 5 years to the date in August. I'm a patient of Dr. Bateman, so I've been her patient for 5 years. I also, just to share with you, I also have a 14-year-old boy. He has also been diagnosed with POTS, and so we know POTS pretty well at our house. We've lived it for the last 5 years, and we've found some things that have helped, and we were hoping to share them with you. And it's an honor for us to be here. It's an honor for us to be able to give back to this Bateman Horn Center for all the things that they have done for me and for my family.
I'm Nicole Bangeter, and I was diagnosed 2.5 years ago with type 1 diabetes. Nan and I started creating healthy recipes kind of as she was healing from her POTS. We have a website at whole-sisters.com where we feature whole-based foods. That's kind of how we created our name, was Whole Sisters, because we really feel like whole foods is what we stand behind. So that is how we kind of got our name. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. We've had the privilege and honor to be featured in 2 healthy cookbooks that are out last year. And last year we were named the top healthy Utah blogger. We love to cook, and we love to share our recipes freely and inspire others to cook. And probably one of our favorite things is we love the platform where we get to share and bring awareness to others about POTS and about type 1 diabetes and about making good choices when it comes to your food.
We have a motto that we love to live by, and the motto is start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And we love this motto because, you know, what might be good for us might not be good for someone else. And we're all at different learning levels. 5 years ago, I was definitely at a large learning curve. I had a lot to learn, and I was glad for that opportunity. And I want to share that the things that we're sharing today are things to help you improve your life. They're not going to be a cure. I wish we could say that just eating healthy would cure your POTS. But we can tell you that, and I can tell you from my own experience, that has improved my quality of life. And I think when I first got POTS, the one thing that was totally lacking is the ability to have hope. I was bedridden. I was home. I'm probably a lot like some of the people that are watching now or here. Like I was craving that, and I would turn to the internet and I'd read stories, and I was lacking hope. So if anything, maybe today we could give you some hope that there is life beyond POTS. They asked us to share my POTS story and to take some time, and it's quite lengthy, but I think it validates that we're all in this together, and we're all starting from different points. So how mine occurred was it was over 5 years ago. It was the springtime, and I was with my children and my husband, and we went to Disneyland. And we were just having this great time at Disneyland when all of a sudden my middle child, at the time he was 12, he started throwing up. And he got sick, and he got this virus, some kind of a bug, and he could not kick it. And so my husband stayed back with him as I took the kids, and we started enjoying the rest of Disneyland. And then the second child, my second son, started to get started to get sick. And the virus, we're having some technical difficulties. The virus was really bad, and he got sick as well. And he started throwing up. So now 2 of my kids were sick. Then my husband started, and he started throwing up, which went on to my last son. And I was the only one that didn't get sick until the plane ride home, and I started to get sick. And I had a virus that they had, and it was quite the airplane ride home. But I never got better. They all started getting better, and they all started being active in their lives, but I didn't. I just had this lingering cough. And finally, after, 3 or 4 weeks, I went to the doctor, and I said, something is wrong. I can't take a deep breath. I just don't feel good. I can't exercise. Something is wrong with me. And he did all the tests, and he's like, I think you have whooping cough. And I was like, oh, okay. And they put me on some medicine. Well, obviously, it didn't do anything. And I just continually got worse. And they tried some other things, and nothing was quite working. And that weekend, it was probably a month later, we had gone and we went to a family vacation, and we were camping. And I remember coming back from camping thinking, this was the worst weekend. I just don't feel right. And it was Memorial Day, and my kids had invited some cousins over to come swimming at our house. And so I'm like, sure, let's do that. So we were at my house, and we were swimming, and I decided to get in the hot tub. And that's when everything went downhill. I got in our hot tub, and if you know heat and hot tubs do not go together. And I got in my hot tub, and I could hardly get out. And I sat there for a minute. I thought, something is definitely wrong with me now. Everything was light. I was weak. I had no energy. And I got out of my hot tub, and I went into my room, and I changed, and I didn't tell anybody. I just was like, something's not right. So my husband came in, and I said, I don't know what's wrong, but I think I'm going to pass out. And that started the onslaught of doctor after doctor after doctor, because I progressively got worse. I was being homebound. I couldn't leave my house. And no doctor could tell me what was wrong with me. And I knew something was wrong with me. It was this feeling of just being so hopeless.
And I should probably, she doesn't really tell the story of really how sick she was. She's very active. She loved the outdoors. She loved to be with her kids. She was homebound to the fact of my parents, we have older parents, who would come to her house on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I would come on Tuesday and Thursday, and we would do her laundry and clean her bathrooms and prepare dinner for her family until her husband got home from work. And this went on for a couple months, and it's really humbling to see your sister be so debilitated by a disease that no one knew what it was. No one could diagnose it.
And as the journey continued, I kept looking for doctors, and one doctor would refer me to another doctor, and another doctor would refer me to another, because no one could quite figure out what was wrong with me. And I listed some symptoms I had, because I sat there and I thought, this just sounds unreal. Like, if you were to say this to anyone, you'd think, what is wrong with her? But these were some of my symptoms. I had shortness of breath. My skin would flush. I couldn't regulate my temperature. I'd be cold and then I'd be hot. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? I just couldn't figure out why my body was reacting that way. I was tired. I had a hard time even just getting up off the couch. Like, my limbs felt heavy, and I can't describe that, but they felt like weights. And I remember one day I was with my mom and we were folding laundry, and she gave me the socks to do, and I started to cry because I couldn't even fold laundry. But it was really humbling. We weren't going to cry, but I wasn't sleeping. I felt anxious. I felt depressed. I was losing muscle. I was losing weight. I didn't want to eat. Nothing tasted good, sounded good. It was just an overwhelming predicament I was in. I remember, as we were talking about food choices, I knew I needed to eat, but I couldn't. And I remember taking an avocado and doing this every single morning, because I didn't have time to sit in the kitchen and make these great meals. You know, I'd sit in the kitchen, I'd open an avocado, I'd take the pit out, and I would just eat it right out of the avocado, because I knew they were healthy fats. I knew it was a source of getting some good nutrients in me. And those are some of the things I did at that time.
It was really hard to sit and watch my sister. She lost a lot of weight. She lost a lot of muscle. She sat in a recliner that my parents had brought over from their house so that she could be part of the family, because she was either in her bed or in this recliner. And it was a really rough summer to watch her be so sick and not be able to participate and do the things that she wanted to do. And I remember we had this conversation of, she thought she was going to die.
We weren't going to do this.
And that's a really hard conversation to have with your sister that doesn't have any answers and doesn't have any motivation or anything to get going and do something, because she was so sick, and she just sat in this chair. And we helped her do whatever needed to be done at her house.
And so I kept continuing for a search, because I knew I wasn't crazy, even though I had one doctor say, I think this is in your head. I think, this cannot be true. You cannot have all these symptoms. And I said, I've never been to you in my life. Like, I don't go to the doctor very often. And that was really humbling for me. And so I started my search. And I remember one doctor referring to chronic fatigue, and I thought, well, I don't really even know what chronic fatigue is. So I decided to look it up and really read about it. And as I was reading about it, it referred to something called POTS. And I looked at that POTS, and I read every symptom that contained POTS. And I just sat there, and I remember calling my mom and saying, I know what I have. I'm pretty sure I have POTS. Like, this is my life. And ironic as it was, my mom knew someone that knew Dr. Bateman. What are the chances? It had been 3 months, and I was able to get into Dr. Bateman in August. This happened in May, and in August I was into Dr. Bateman. And I remember, I was telling Nicole, one thing that I remember is, like, how am I going to get from the car to the 4th floor, because it was in the different building. And I sat there and I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Something that we all take for granted so easily. I sat there and thought, I don't know how I'm going to get to the 4th floor. But I made it up there. And I remember sitting in the waiting area, and Dr. Bateman came down the hall, and she grabbed me and she says, come on back, Nanette. And my husband was with me, and we started walking. And as we were walking, she said, I know what you have, and I'm going to make you better. It was the first time that a doctor had validity into what was going on in my life. And sure enough, I went in there, and she did all the tests, and she's like, you've got POTS. And it was just a relief to me. And immediately, I remember her talking about starting me on some medicine. And right away, she started me on some medicine. But I do particularly remember her talking to me about exercise and how you can get debilitated so quickly that you need to keep moving. Well, by this point, I had lost muscle mass. I was not moving. So I went home and seriously, I had 1 pound weights. I mean, that sounds ridiculous. I couldn't even fold socks. So I would take these 1 pound weights and I would exercise with them. And it was just the beginning of my journey to recovery. And then she also talked about eating. And she said, you know, it's really important that you feed your body good things. And I remember walking away from there thinking, this POTS has defined me for 3 months. It's not going to define me anymore. And I started researching. I knew I had control of what I could do, which was exercise and health. And the rest was up to Dr. Bateman, and she was doing her part, but I needed to do my part.
And she was really good at doing her part. Like, I remember I was standing in her laundry room and she said, I'm going to go for a walk. And I said, oh, well, wait, I am coming with you. Because she couldn't even make it from, like, down the hall. And she's like, no, I am bound and determined to get better, and I'm going for a walk. And we got down her 3 steps, and she made it to the sidewalk, and she turned around and she came back in. But it was to the sidewalk. And we were so excited that she was able to make it to the sidewalk. And, you know, every day it would be
A different
to the
goal.
Sidewalk or back. It would be to the mailbox or back. And my mom and I would go there, and this is kind of how Whole Sisters started, is we would cook meals for her family. And I was like, you know, I have a family at home. I'm just going to start cooking my meals at her house, and then I'll just divide it and take the other half home with me. And as we started to do that, and as she learned these things, you know, I'm looking at these recipes that we're making for her family, and we decided we need to clean these up. You know, they're great recipes, but they're full of sugar or they're full of processed foods and different things like that. And so we really tried to clean things up. And how we did that was we started at the very beginning and the very basics. And we started with what we look for when we buy food, which are, you have to read your labels carefully and don't trust what the front of the package says. Stay on the perimeter of the store. They set grocery stores up in a way they want you to shop in between their aisles and their end caps for all of their sugary cereals, and they put, you know, at eye level all of the good treats for your kids that they're gonna want and beg for. They know what they're doing, but if you shop the perimeter where they have their produce and their dairy and their proteins, you know, that's a good start. The fewer ingredients, the better. And if you can't pronounce the ingredients, it's usually not good for you. And notice the sugar content. And it can have, you know, the sugar content can be out of control. It could be a corn syrup or something like that, but it's still labeled low fat when it really isn't. And look for keywords like no hormones added, organic, grass-fed, and kind of go back to nature. Go back to, you know, the basics of food. And we have learned a lot in our community, our media social. Follow people on Instagram, follow people on Facebook, listen to podcasts, start seeing what products they use, what recipes they're doing, things like that, and mimic them. It will help just kind of start, you know, it's just a good start.
I remember one time Nicole took me to the grocery store, and I was in a wheelchair, and she had to wheel me around, and we had to gather groceries and get us back and still make a meal. And I was so grateful that I had the ability to have a sister that would do that with me and help me navigate this, because this was not an easy road. And we started to really research about food. Like, what is it about food? And the one thing we started to notice is that food has changed over the years. Like, food is not like it was. Things began to change in the 1950s when the idea of shortcut and faster food became the norm. Today, our processed food resemble anything but the original intent. They're lacking all sorts of nutrients. They're full of preservatives. They have artificial flavors, artificial coloring. I mean, there's so many things in our food that they have put in them. So what makes a food makes us feel good or bad? Is that some foods will make our gut inflamed. An unhealthy gut can cause all sorts of things like bloating, food sensitivity, fatigue, brain fog, headaches, joint pain, anxiety, depression, digestive problems. Those are a lot of things. And when your body is inflamed, your POTS is worse. And that's what I started to notice. Like, I would eat sugar and I felt terrible. Or I would have a soda and I felt terrible. And as soon as we started eating better foods and changing those bad bacterias and taking a probiotic, we noticed a difference in our health. We started to feel better.
And when you're like navigating the food world, the words are thrown around like organic, not organic, grass-fed, all of those kind of things. And not all produce is created equal. Some produce is more susceptible to pesticides than other produce. And organic produce is grown within this certain law of nature, and it's not grown from genetically modified seeds, which we hear all the time about GMOs, how they're genetically modified so that they can produce more or more product for a farmer to do. But when you're looking for a place of where to start when it comes to organic versus non-organic, we always kind of refer to the Dirty Dozen. They're called the Dirty Dozen because these are a list of produce that you should always, whenever possible, you should buy. There's a group that analyzed the Department of Agriculture data about pesticides and residues and ranks the foods based on how much or how little of pesticide residue they have on them. And these are even after they've been washed, they test them. And these foods up here on this slide have been highly chemical treated. And so if you stay away from these 12 foods, the group has estimated that individuals can reduce their exposure by 80%. So if you stay away from these Dirty Dozen, 80%, that's a lot, can be switched
unless
to,
they're organic. Right?
Yeah, if they switch to organic when you're buying these. So if you switch to organic when you're buying the Dirty Dozen, that will help you tremendously. The Dirty Dozen consists of strawberries, spinach, nectarines, apples, peaches, pears, cherries, grapes, celery, tomatoes, sweet bell peppers, and potatoes. And also, kale and green beans are slowly making their way up to the top of that list. So those are things that you should try to buy organic. Eating fresh-grown produce is the best way to obtain the nutrients and support the optimum health. But the pesticides used on many crops remain a major health concern. By choosing organic foods, you can reap the health benefits of fruits and vegetables without exposing yourself or your family to potential harmful chemicals. Pesticides present a real health risk, particularly to children and those who have health concern. It's also worth noting that even though it says that it's organic, it doesn't mean that it's completely pesticide-free. It means that they use restricted or limited, there's like a rule of what chemicals are allowed to be used to make a food organic. Another thing is the Clean 15. The Clean 15 are foods that you don't necessarily have to buy organic, but if you're given the choice, you can buy them organic. And this list includes onions, avocados, corn, pineapples, mangoes, sweet peas, asparagus, kiwi, cabbage, eggplant, cantaloupe, watermelon, grapefruit, sweet potatoes, and sweet onions. And if you can kind of see, a good rule of thumb is if you can peel the fruit or the vegetable, then it's safer to eat, such as bananas, mangoes, and melons. If you can't peel it, then you should try to buy it like organic. The pesticides, like I said, farmers are trying to yield a higher crop, which, therefore makes them more money. So we want to eat the freshest and the most natural organic fruits and vegetables that we can. So when you can, you should always strive to shop organic, local, and homegrown. And we know that when you say the word organic, it like doubles in price. And we don't, there are some things that we're like, we can afford to buy that in organic. So just start. We just say take a few of those and on the Dirty Dozen, and just take a few and start implementing them into your lives of organic food, and your list will get bigger and bigger, and then before you know it, you'll be organic to where it matters for you. And do some research on there. One of the things is, we learn a lot of things. Like, these are just things that we've learned along this journey, and it's like a building block. It's one thing, and then you stack another thing you learn, and another thing you learn, and you're always stacking blocks and learning new things. And Nan is always wanting to learn new things with her pots. While she was sick, she did a lot of looking on internet and things like that, and she came across this elimination diet. And we had already started to clean up our diet by doing the Dirty Dozen and all those kind of things, and swapping out a few things. But she said, I want to do this elimination diet. And I was like, okay, what is it? And she says, it consists of no dairy, no grains, no sugar, no soda, and no alcohol.
You were like, what am I going to eat?
And at the time, I have been at her house every day, 2 days a week, and I would help her. I would walk on coals with bare feet if I had to for her. So I was like, sign me up. We're doing this. And I remember getting in my car after I told her that I am here for you and I will do this with you if it's going to help you to get better. And I sat in my car and I thought, what did I just sign up for? I just told her that I would support her in this and that we would be accountable to each other, and I had no idea what I was going to eat. So everything on this list was like right up my alley.
So this was probably about 9 months after I was first diagnosed with POTS that I came across this elimination diet, and I said, okay, Nicole, are you ready to try something with me? And she was like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't know if I can give up all those foods. And I was starting to feel better. I was doing more around my house. I was actually driving, which I wasn't doing earlier. I wasn't driving my kids at all. And I actually did my Christmas shopping that year, which I thought at the time when I got diagnosed with POTS in August, there's no way. Like, I was fully functioning, but there were still some things lingering in my symptoms. I still would get this, it's almost like a anxious feeling, like my heart would race, like for no apparent reason. And so I wanted to see what I could do to get rid of that. I thought, if I could just clean up my diet, and we started. And the first week we started this, and we couldn't have dairy, we couldn't have grains, we couldn't have sugar. It was pretty hard. I have to say, like, we were reinventing the wheel, and we started to just cook vegetables and fruit and proteins and nuts, and we were being quite inventive. And
it was kind of nice to think outside the box. It forced us to think outside the box. Never would have I had leftover chicken from the night before for breakfast with sautéed sweet potatoes. That didn't seem like a breakfast food to me, but it fueled me for the day, and it was just what I needed. But I wouldn't have been forced to put those options together if it weren't for the elimination diet.
Right, and so we went about this diet and we did it for 30 days. We did 30 days with none of this stuff. And like we said, the first week was hard. But by probably week 2 or 3, I felt so good. I'm like, I have more energy. I'm not as tired. Was my POTS symptoms totally gone? No. But was there a difference? Absolutely. And so I knew.
I didn't crave sugar. Like, you know, you can get those after you've had a meal and you're like, oh, I think I want some dessert. I didn't crave sugar. It was like I had mastered that sugar beast that was inside of me by eliminating it.
Right.
I wasn't feeding it anymore.
Yeah, and so then we finished the 30 days, and that's where we started to do our own kind of experimenting, and we started introducing things. And I don't know about you, but have you ever been to a doctor and they give you all this medicine at once and you don't know what's helping you? It was the same concept with food. Like, we just couldn't start eating the way we were. We would never figure out what was actually causing us to feel that way. And so I remember that we started to, I started to eat toast. And I went by what this says here. I started to realize, how do I feel? Like, how is this toast making me feel? Do I feel bloated? Do my joints hurt? Do I hurt anywhere? Do I feel anxious? Because for me, that was a big thing. I would feel anxious. I would feel my heart race. It was a terrible feeling. And so that week I started toast. And that's the only thing I started. And I did really, really well. And I'm like, okay, I'm still feeling great like I did at day 30.
I introduced dairy into my diet and immediately realized that it was a trigger for my arthritis. You know, my joints hurt more. I would wake up in the morning, my fingers would be more stiff than normal, and it was a trigger food for me. And I would have never known that.
No, and that was the same, and maybe because we have the same genetic makeup, but the second week I introduced myself to dairy. And I remember I had a bowl of cereal, Special K, and I got done, and maybe 20 minutes later, my heart started to race. I was sitting in a chair, and I felt that anxious feeling, and I thought, there is a correlation here. And so I went off of it, and I introduced some other things. I introduced some corn. I introduced some beans. Just some other things that I had eliminated from my diet, and I was having no effects from them. Went back, maybe it was a week later, my family went out for ice cream, and all of a sudden my anxious feeling came back. I knew I had a correlation. I could eat regular dairy, like I could have Greek yogurt if it had a low sugar, but if I had a dairy with a sugar, some of my POTS symptoms were exacerbated. And so this elimination diet not only helped me, but my 14-year-old, we have done a whole revamp. And now he can tell you, and he will tell me, Mom, I can't have that in my lunch. Mom, will you switch this out? He gave up pizza of the week. I mean, he gets pizza once a week at his school. That's the only time that they offer lunch. And he's like, I can't do it. I eat it. I feel anxious. And so now, like, he has the healthiest lunch you could ever imagine for a 14-year-old boy.
Well, he has POTS too.
Right, he has POTS, and he notices. He's like, don't give me the typical, sandwich, chips, and cookies and a drink like we normally do. He gets a Gatorade. He usually gets some turkey meat that's like a non-nitrate, some type of natural turkey meat. He can do cheese. We do cheese, like little cheeses in there. He does like a Lara bar and fruit and vegetables, and then the ranch that everyone's having tonight. Like, we'll usually put that in. And he says, Mom, I'm fuller longer. I feel better. It's just a different lifestyle. It's a lifestyle my family's had to adapt to, and it's a lifestyle we're happy we're adapting to it.
Some of we talk about these swap out ideas, like what we swap things for, and we have a list on this slide of just things that Nan and I swap out, just so you can just look over this list, add to it, make your own list, but you'll realize certain things work better for you than other things. But one of the things we like to do is we have, like we said earlier, we have a website and an Instagram and Facebook and things like that where we offer our recipes. And Dump Ranch is one of our recipes that we created in my kitchen. It is dairy-free. It is, instead of being made with a buttermilk, it's made with a coconut milk. It's better for you. It tastes great. It's probably one of our top pinned, posted, tagged recipes that we have, but it's just an example of a food swap out, that we swapped something out for something else and it works.
We thought we'd share another one. It's what we brought tonight. We brought our Asian sesame chicken salad, and we grew up, we grew up with a garden. My mom was a healthy person, but we made, I don't know if any of you have made this Asian chicken salad where you take ramen noodles and you put it in there and then you have a soy sauce mixture, and it's actually, it's quite tasty. It has a lot of sugar in it. Nicole and I said, you know what, we want to recreate Mom's Asian chicken salad, but we don't want all the preservatives that are in there. And the dressing, we didn't want to have soy sauce because soy sauce is known as an inflammatory. And we took the sugar out and we added dates. Just all sorts of little tricks that we have learned as using like a sweetener instead of sugar. There's so many natural sweeteners. There's figs. There's dates. We've used honey, orange juice. Like, we use that in our dressings. And so when looking at things, try to do something out of the norm. Don't do it the way that you were raised. There is other ways to make a recipe and still make it taste homey and taste good. Food was meant to taste good.
And that's kind of what we've done. When you visit our website, you will see foods that are healthy for you. Most of them are our grandma's recipe, our mom's recipe, our old recipes that we've adapted to be healthy, that we've substituted things in them so that they are better for us. They're a better food choice for us. For example, like our blender salsa, we don't put any sugar in it. We don't put anything. We do frozen pineapple in it. Tastes amazing. So it's just our basic recipes that we've grown up with just a little twist to make them healthy.
When Nicole and I were doing our 30-day elimination diet, we wanted sugar really bad. But we came
like the first week.
Yeah, we came up with this salted coconut over fruit, and all it was is we just took fruit and whatever was in season, and we put it in a bowl, and we took coconut and coconut oil, and we browned it up. We put it on top of it. We'd put a little bit of salt on it, and it was just as good. And we just had to find ways to change what we were doing. Which goes back to our last slide of start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And hopefully, wherever you're at this stage, wherever you are in your illness, that you can adapt just one thing. If you just found one thing in this presentation that you can change in your life and adapt, it's worth it.
And build off of it.
Right, and it's
just that one thing can turn into another thing, which then turns into a lifestyle.
And for me and my POTS, was this the cure-all? No, it wasn't the cure-all. Has it impacted my life greatly? Yes, it has. What we do eat, it makes a difference. And so hopefully we've left you with some information that you can use. I don't know if we have questions or is there some things.
Could you go back to the substitutions list?
Yes.
Swap?
Yeah, the swap.
Absolutely.
For instance, like whole fruits versus fruit juice. You know, I cringe every time my kids drink juice. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I don't drink juice. I'm not going to drink my carbs or my sugars. But it's better for you to eat that piece of fruit. It makes your body work. There's fibers in that fruit that are going to help your organs, your digestive system, and things like that. So it's an easy swap out.
Yeah, and some of these, like the coconut aminos for soy sauce, that's in our Asian chicken salad. It's just coconut sap. Some other things that if you're really if you're really searching for some answers, we've gotten into natural yeast breads, which is a great way, but it's time consuming. So we didn't want to share things that were too hard for someone that has POTS. But you know, sourdough breads are great alternatives for people that are having dairy issues. And just some of these little swaps.
Like things like I used to, before I was diagnosed, I used to just have regular yogurt. And once I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I swapped from regular yogurt to Greek yogurt because one, it has more protein for me than the other regular yogurt. So it's just those simple things of knowledge.
And if you're doing the yogurt, sometimes they're high in sugar. You have to look at that. So it's better to add a little bit of honey than get something that's loaded with sugar.
Would you go over your website?
Yeah.
Maybe your website, the address.
You can find our website at www.whole-sisters.com. And you can just Google Whole Sisters and we pop right up with Dump Ranch and all these recipes that we've talked about. Our recipe, when we started Instagram, it kind of was like an accountability for me and my sister. And it kind of snowballed where people wanted, we want to see what you're making. And then they wanted the recipe. And our website's really easy to navigate. You can print off the recipe at the end. We want to share. We want to share our knowledge with those, that we can help.
Isn't dark brown sugar better than the processed sugar? It's better for you.
Yes.
So that's what I use.
And
Than
even
a regular sugar.
yes, and even a coconut sugar.
Would you guys repeat the question, please, to make sure you get it on the...
Oh, he was asking, instead of white sugar, is brown sugar better? Yes, and actually we prefer using coconut sugar, like a raw coconut sugar. That's what we would recommend over a white processed sugar.
And if you eliminate some of these things from your diet, you don't crave them. Your taste buds kind of adapt and change, and you don't miss mayos and breads and different things like that are full of.
But we do have mayonnaise that is clean
mayo
on our website too.
You have the swap ideas on your website as well?
No, just for here.
Yeah. We'll post your slides if that's okay with
Yeah.
you in a blog.
Absolutely.
I'm a caregiver provider, and I'm so curious about your story about, it sounds like you had a lot of frustration along the way to diagnosis.
Absolutely.
And among the people that you did see who aren't here, not who specifically, but what suggestions did you come across that were most helpful to you in terms of primary care or other specialties?
Yeah.
you saw?
The only one that actually gave me some validity was a doctor I went to, an MS doctor, because someone said, well, maybe you have MS. And, I thought, well, maybe that's what I have. Maybe that's why I'm weak, and he was the only one that said, have you thought about chronic fatigue? But I remember, I was telling Nicole, I don't know if I should share this, but I remember going to an ER twice. Like, just so sick. Like, I couldn't breathe. I'm like, what is going on with me? And I remember the one time the doctor just sent me home and said, I don't know what's wrong with you. And being a nurse, I should have picked up some of these clues. Like, I got out of the bed to go to the bathroom and my heart rate monitor went off like crazy, but I didn't have one doctor do an orthostatic test on me. Not one doctor out of probably, my primary doctor was the one I was seeing over and over again. And I probably went to two other doctors. And no one did a basic orthostatic to say, oh, that's the problem. But I was getting to the second ER doctor that I went to. I remember going in there and giving him my symptoms and saying, something's not right. This is not me. And at the end of my visit with him, he looked me in the eye and he said, have you thought about getting some psychiatric help? And I remember sitting there and I said to my husband, I'm like, am I crazy? It's like, you're not crazy. This is not my wife. This is not you. So I find it frustrating. I find the medical community is misinformed. I've had 2 people that have had POTS, that one of them, a friend of ours, her daughter has been sick for quite some time, and she was telling me the symptoms. And I said to her, you have got to take her to get checked for POTS. She's like, oh, I've been to like 4 doctors. We've been dealing with this for 3 years. She's 19 years old and she had POTS. I don't know. How do we change that? That's hard. I think it's getting to be more.
I think we change it by what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about it, we talk about symptoms, we talk about, you know, things like that. Get the word out there. You know, when I tell people that my sister has POTS, they don't even know what it is, so I have to explain to them what it is. And the more people we can explain to them what it is, you know, 1, the faster they're going to find a cure, and 2, the faster they're going to find a diagnosis.
I often wonder if the word ever gets back to those medical providers.
Actually, this is the funny part. So my primary care doctor, I probably went to him 6 times over the course of 2 months, and I called back and I said, you know, I think you ought to know what I have. Like, I was in your office once, maybe twice a week, I think, you know, and his MA said, oh, well, I'll pass it on. Well, I didn't get a call. So I was determined that he had to know what I had, because if I wanted to be responsible for anyone behind me, like if someone else comes through your office, I want you to know what this is. So I called back and she said, well, he's busy. And I said, well, I really need to talk to him. Will you please have him call me? And it took a while, but he called me and I thanked him. I thanked him for all that he had done for me. And I said, I think you ought to know that I have POTS. And he started to question me. And he said, well, have you had the tilt test done? And I said, no. I said, but I've gone to a doctor that specializes in that. And, you know, Dr. Bateman's very well known. And he said, well, I still think that you should get some help with your depression. He really went back to saying it was depression, which is hysterical to me, because I've never once been depressed in my life until I got this disorder. And now I'm depressed, you know. Yeah, POTS will make anyone depressed. So I did pass that on. I don't know where he took it from there, but I'm hoping somewhere.
Send them information.
Can I just stand up here and
Okay.
read, so the mics will pick me up, I hope. This is from one of our Facebook Live viewers, and she would like to know your thoughts about the latest about coconut milk or oil versus coconut oil, milk or oil.
Coconut oil and milk?
Coconut milk
Well,
or oil.
Okay.
Just in general.
Coconut milk and coconut oil are totally
Different.
two separate things, but actually it's one we use all the time. Coconut milk is what we make our dump ranch out of. It's a great product. It's a very great product, and coconut oil is a really good product, along with olive oil, and we also use avocado oil, because avocado oil, and I'm not quite sure on coconut oil how high it can heat, but avocado oil has like a high heat. I think you can go up to 500.
Like a smoke point before it.
Yeah, before it turns. So they're great. I mean, we use those all the time.
I don't even have vegetable oil in my house anymore. I
No.
just use
Canola,
the
all that out.
avocado oil and
Olive oil,
olive oil.
coconut.
So we also have another viewer who wants to know if you guys deliver.
Just here.
Yes, here.
Are there any more questions from the group here?
So do you have a cookbook together, or just the recipes on your website?
We don't have a cookbook. We've been asked that many times. We're both really busy with our lives and our families, and cookbooks, we've looked into it, take a lot of time. And we just want everyone to be able to print our recipes off. You know, we want to share what we've learned. You know, some of these we came up, like Dump Ranch, we came up with that on our own. But there are other things that we've learned through other people that shared with us, and we want to share
Yeah.
You can get all of our recipes at Whole Sisters.
And yeah, and you can go and there's a recipe index, and it'll go through like breakfast, main meal, side salads, vegetables, fruits,
Dips.
and you just can look through there. And I'd say 95% of our things are grain free, dairy free, soy free, sugar free. So yeah, it's all there. It's pretty user friendly.
So I might have misinterpreted the first question about milk and oil.
Okay.
So I think what they're looking for, I guess there was something recently claimed that the coconut milk oil, I'm not sure which, isn't as good as claimed. Are you guys aware
You know
of
what?
that?
I remember them talking about that, but I remember it being rebuked. And I don't
I
know.
don't remember the backstory of why.
But you're still advocates.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's a staple.
it's in my pantry. And you know, these are things that you can adapt. Nan has 3 boys. I have 5 children. I make our recipes, and my kids, they love them. They request them. They want them. It's just a matter of actually putting the effort into it and doing it. I think we're so used to going to fast food, doing those kind of things, that we kind of get in a rut. But it doesn't mean that we can't go to a fast food, order a salad. We used to take along a side
ranch.
container of either a balsamic or a dump ranch with us and put our own dressing on it. You know, it's just those small little things that you can do.
Yep.
Okay, last chance. In the audience. All right, we've got just one more on Facebook Live, and then we'll call it a wrap.
Okay.
What about picky eaters? How do you undo the pickiness?
We have teenagers, so we know picky. And you know what? We adapted our recipes to be family friendly. That's our biggest goal. Is we don't want to have crazy weird recipes that are not obtainable. It's like we have a recipe for Nutri-Fries, which our kids go nuts over.
And, you know, I did have a picky eater. I had my daughter, when she was probably about 12, she didn't want to eat any meat. And she wouldn't eat any meat. And I would say to her, that's fine, but we need to supplement with other foods and other things like that. And I remember my mom saying to me, aren't you worried about it? You know, and I just kind of let it go. I didn't make a big deal about it, and I didn't draw attention to it. And bit by bit, she just started to adapt those things. So I think if we don't make a big deal about a vegetable, you know, or something like that, you know, it's just what we do.
Yeah, and I remember my oldest is probably the pickiest eater around, and now he'll eat anything, and we just laugh. I'm like, is he in the kitchen cutting up fruit and making coconut chips? I think it just becomes a way of life. I think if you just do all this all at once, I think that's overwhelming for a family, but if you start incorporating it, I think they start to crave it.
Yeah, and I think that they don't have to. At my house, you don't have to eat it. If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it, but I'm not going to make you something else. But I've always made carrots and things like that. My husband doesn't like carrots. He didn't like avocados. But guess who likes carrots and avocados? Being married for so long now, he does. Because I still made them, you know. So I think you adapt, and you know, don't stop serving them just because they are picky.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's such a heartfelt and being so honest about what you guys went through with this illness. And thank you for all the great ideas on the food. And I can't wait to visit your website and start looking at these recipes. And the food that they brought in was absolutely delicious. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Yes.
Oh, good.
Are there any restaurants that you